Hi, I'm Julie Ross.
And I'm Gregory Abbey.
And you're listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
Julie is a longtime parent educator and counselor.
And Greg is an actor, writer, and director, and more importantly, a parent just like you.
Through conversations covering a range of different topics, challenges, and roadblocks, we hope to give you a few of Julie's tools that might just help make parenting a little bit easier.
Look, nobody's perfect, and parenting is challenging, to say the least. With a few skills under our belts, though, we might just be able to be good enough parents and enjoy the journey and our children a little bit more in the process.
Hi, welcome back to the Parenting Horizons podcast. Thanks for joining us again. And to our listeners, I think I just wanted to say we appreciate you, right?
100%. We really do.
So if you're tuning in and have been listening to the podcast, we appreciate it. And you may have already done this, but feel free to share with your friends and family and anyone who you think might need some help, right?
Yeah, and encourage them to subscribe.
Great. Yeah, you can find us everywhere you find podcasts. So today, it's interesting because Julie and I have been recording remote a lot and working with guests, and we had an opportunity to do one of our podcasts together, which is always nice. And I texted Julie the other day, like yesterday, to say like, hey, what should we talk about? And this is why Julie's great, because I had a feeling this is coming. And as everyone knows, today is May 31st. So last week there was the shooting in Uvalde. I believe it's Uvalde, isn't it?
Uvalde.
Right. The school shooting where I think at this point it's 19 school children and maybe 2 adults were killed.
Yeah, I think so.
So Julie texted me.
Subsequent to that, Greg, there was a shooting in Oklahoma, and right before that was the massacre in Buffalo.
In Buffalo, right.
Not school children in either of those places.
Yeah, a grocery store and a church, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And this is sort of ongoing, and I think, we don't really delve into the politics of things too much on here. It's mostly our focus is about the kids. But my point is that Julie texted me back and she said, I think we need to talk about what happened in Texas.
Yeah.
On the next episode. And I knew that was coming. And for me, as I'm sure like a lot of people, it's just been hard to wrap your mind around. And I've had to like dip my toe into it. I haven't watched the news much, but I've certainly been reading, but certainly to see the photos of the children, it's just been really painful. But I'm glad you did that because I got your text and I was kind of like, I know she's right. And we should talk about this.
Yeah, we should. And I mean, listen, I don't want to either. It just seems to be, it seems to happen over and over and over again. And so it feels like we're repeating ourselves a lot with the advice that we are giving to people. And for me, there's just kind of this sense of helplessness around it. Like we're talking and it's still not going away. But
you mean in terms of just mass shootings in general?
Yeah, mass shootings in general. Gun violence specifically. And yet, it's so important that parents be reminded about how to handle it with their children, no matter what the children's ages are, because it's not going away. And I hope everybody out there will do whatever they feel like they can do to help the cause and make it go away. But in the meantime, I think parents need help in figuring out how to communicate with their kids about it.
Right. So I think that's the focus of the episode today is Julie is going to talk about, because I don't have much expertise anyway, except being a parent. So I'm going to rely on Julie. And I think today the episode is about what we can do to talk about, I guess Texas specifically, this has been happening a lot, but just, let's take Texas for an example. And when an event like this occurs, how you talk to your children about it. And I think we can move through the ages a little bit because it's going to shift, maybe do sort of preteens and then, tweens and teens. It's going to be a different conversation. It seems like things will overlap. You're going to tell me this, but I'm assuming there'll be some things that overlap. But let's start with like the younger children. I'm assuming like when you're dealing with kids, is it 5 or 6 and under, that conceptually it's hard for them to even have an understanding of what exactly has happened?
Yeah, I think that's true. Obviously, this is all bets are off if your child has direct contact with someone who was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So, that we're not talking to that population. We're talking about the people who are removed. So for some kids, it can feel very theoretical as opposed to, real. I think the main thing that parents need to know is that you should always assume that your child has heard something
Mm-hmm.
about it. And that's regardless of the age. Children under 5 have a tendency to not be aware necessarily of the news itself,
Right.
of kind of the factual information, but what they will be doing is picking up on parents' feelings and the feelings of their environment in general.
Sure. Even outside the house, I would imagine too, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And a lot of kids under 5 are in daycare or they're in preschool, and they may be, exposed to active shooter
Drills. Right.
drills. And certainly they're aware of the teachers in those places are feeling it and feeling uncomfortable, and the parents are feeling uncomfortable. It's hard, I think, as a parent to send your child to school
Sure.
when something like this it happens, and it happens repeatedly, and to the point where they're active shooter drills. So I think the biggest mistake parents make is ignoring it, not talking to the kids about it, because they say, "Oh, my kid doesn't have access to the news. We don't have the news on in our house. We don't let the kids watch the news." But if you're watching the news, or even if you're just reading about the news, you have feelings, and you're
Sure.
going to have feelings about sending your kids to school.
Do you think at that age, so like say under 5, it's more about, because you're not going to directly maybe talk about what happened, but just keeping an eye on the feelings, or talking about the feelings, or keeping an eye on them emotionally more so than actually having a literal conversation about it at that age?
Yeah, exactly. You might be able to have a conversation about it with a kid who's in preschool, not necessarily, obviously, daycare. But, Greg, I constantly come back to it's never wrong to talk about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
When in doubt, talk about feelings, right? So whether you think they've heard the actual news or not, pay attention and tune in.
Right.
Do they seem clingy?
Mm.
Are they having a little bit of separation anxiety where maybe they didn't before? Are they having trouble sleeping? This is all for the kids who may not be able to even put words to their
Right. And I think
feelings.
your point is, it sounds like what you're saying is that they might not even have any literal knowledge of what happened, but they can be picking up emotionally what's going on, even from, if the parents are carrying around their own anxiety or distress around it.
Sure. And I would also say to parents, watch what your children are playing. And I don't mean on video games. I mean watch how they're playing with their stuffed animals, with their trucks, with their blocks, whatever. Because if a child has information that a young child has information that they're having trouble processing, it will come out in their play. So I remember after, the Twin Towers fell here in New York, I had parents of very young kids say, "Well, my kids don't know anything about it." But the children were playing with blocks and playing with a toy airplane and having the toy airplane fly into the blocks. They were trying to process, they'd heard something.
Right.
This is 2 and 3 years old. They'd heard something, and they were trying to figure out, what was going on. And a lot of them started playing good guys versus bad guys. And, I'm going to get the bad guys and this kind of thing. So if we pay attention to younger children's play, and by younger, I would say, all the way up until they have a cell phone.
Right.
Which I hope is not until after grade 5, but I'm realistic. So children up to the age of 10 play things out.
So it's just staying attuned. I mean, which is always kind of an Uber thing that we talk about, but it seems particular in this circumstance that just to be attuned to those feelings, especially if they're age 5 or under. And then as we move into elementary school kids, I mean, tragically, it was elementary school kids that were
I
murdered
know.
down in Texas,
I know.
which is kind of unfathomable. So if you're talking ages, would you say like 6 to 10 or 11 before they move into tweens? What are some of the ways that parents can talk to kids of that age, say like 6 to tweens?
Well, again, I would say assume that your child's heard something. Because even if you don't have the news on in your house, which is, I think, highly unlikely, they are peers with kids whose parents do have the news on in their house. So they're aware through peers, if not through your own individual household. So assume they know something. And then there's just a very simple question that you can ask. Have you heard what happened in Uvalde?
Well, I like this. You've said this before too, is in that the idea is maybe finding out what they know first before, you overtalk or overshare.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's another key component here is don't overtalk.
Right.
We've said this before. You want to be honest. You want to keep it simple. And which also means age appropriate. And you want to leave a lot of room for questions.
Yeah, I feel like you've said keep it simple, keep it truthful, only answer questions that have been asked.
Absolutely.
And that idea is that you give space for them to sort of share.
Yeah, exactly. So the question, and this is a question not only for elementary school kids, but for tweens and teens as well, is to say, what have you heard? What are you hearing in the news lately? Did you hear about what happened in Oklahoma? Did you hear about what happened in Uvalde? Did you hear about what happened in Buffalo? You don't ask all of that once, right? But the news that they were the most likely to hear is the one that you want to target.
Right.
And ask them, what have you heard? I was talking to a client the other day, and she said, I really wanted to talk to my kids about this. And she said, and so I asked the question, and they said, oh yeah, we heard about it. And she said, do you have any questions? No. Very casual, which hurts my heart in one way, right? That
You mean they're in a way this is like old hat at this point?
It's old hat. It's it's just omnipresent, I guess. So that is sad for me, but it's also sad in that I think when a kid is casual about it, it's hard to get into feelings that might be buried.
So would you say in that circumstance, because there's a couple of things, like the child might feel overloaded in the moment, like you can titrate the information, like it doesn't mean like, hey, we're going to have the talk about what happened in Texas, and it all happens in
Right.
that moment. So let's say in this circumstance where the child says, I'm fine, nah, nothing. I mean, do you revisit maybe in a couple days just to say, hey, have you had any more thoughts? Are they talking about it at school? Like, what would you say?
Yeah. Well, first I would say for the kid who is nonchalant and, shrugs it off, I would say, okay, well, listen, if you have any thoughts or feelings or questions that come up, please come back to me. So open that up so that they feel comfortable coming back. And then, yes, a couple of days later, I would say, I'm wondering, there's a lot of buzz still going on about Uvalde, and I'm wondering if, anything's come up for you, or kind of what's the talk at school about it? What's going on there?
Yeah, I like this idea of circling back, because I will say what happens with my own kids is that I have an assumption that they're fine, and they might even say they're fine. And I think you would say don't take that for granted, like,
Yeah.
oh, they seem okay, they didn't really say anything, they're not really talking about it, so they're fine. Because
Mhm.
I've had instances with my kids where they seem, yeah, they're fine, there's no big deal, and then 4 nights later, my daughter can't sleep through the night.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I guess that, not to take it for granted that, they're fine.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. A lot of parents, I think, when, even on the first couple of passes, when trying to talk about difficult information, when their kid's like dismissive, a lot of parents are like, phew, good. I don't have to talk about that hard subject that
Right,
nobody
right.
wants to talk about,
Right.
least of all me. But we can't take that as a pass. We have to come back and say, what's going on? What are your classmates talking about? What are they saying about it? Are your teachers addressing it? Because I guarantee you that their dismissiveness is a form of protection.
Sure.
And I think we all do it. We all
Believe me, when you texted me, I
compartmentalize.
was a little like, okay.
I
But you
know.
always say this in anything I'm reading now. It's like any expert is saying open and direct, open and direct.
Yeah.
And you always say that whether it's about sex, drugs, that the more transparent and open you can be with your kid, at least make the attempt, the better. Like they aren't
Yeah.
things to shy away from, because I think I would imagine those buried things just start to come out in other ways.
Yeah. And I think the other component here is to offer some sort of reassurance, not in a magical thought sort of way, not like everything's going to be fine, you're safe, blah, blah, blah. But I think kids need to know that you're aware of what's going on and that you as the parents are doing everything possible to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that the school, is going to do everything possible.
Is that like, because these crazy active shooter drills that they have to do, but is that a way to say, like, I don't know, how do you deal with that? That they have to go on? Is that a way of reassuring, like, hey, these are important, that we take these safety precautions at school?
That's
it's just
a
wild.
great question, and it
When they come home and
is.
say, Mom or Dad or Moms, why do I have to go sit under my desk once in a while?
Exactly.
What is it? Keep it simple, keep it truthful. Because you have to be honest about why they have to do that if they really ask, especially if that at that age, I imagine, when they're 7, 8, 9.
Well, it's up in the air about whether the active shooter drills really do any good.
Right.
Or if psychologically they do more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. Create anxiety that's not there, maybe.
It's so hard. Look, I'm old enough to remember when I lived in Texas. So first of all, we had tornado drills, and those were very real. But we also had drills in case we were bombed by
nuclear war. I remember the nuclear war ones were like, which I had no conception. I was like in 3rd or 4th grade in Nebraska. I think we had the tornado ones, but I can remember there was like a nuclear war, but it,
you got under your desk.
Yeah.
Did you get under your desk?
I think I got under my desk, or we were in a hallway. But I guess also thinking back, like, especially then, like, we've evolved, but there was no discussion about why you would do it.
No.
I didn't talk to my parents about it. I mostly just felt like, what the hell? What's happening?
Exactly. And I, just because of my personality, I internalized the anxiety and became very anxious about things that the likelihood of them happening were really small. Not the tornado thing, because that's a deal. But, getting bombed. I had nightmares for years and years as an elementary age child.
And no one checking in with you about that.
Nobody checked in with me. Nobody checked in. And so I think that's why it's so important that parents do check in. Parents are like, well, why should I bring it up if they're not thinking about it? Why should I bring it up? It's just going to make them think about it. But they probably are thinking about it.
Right.
And if the adults in their homes and in their environments aren't talking about it, then it becomes problematic. So back to the active shooter drills, I think as the parent, you have to encourage your child to follow the instructions that the school is giving. So if the school is saying there are going to be active shooter drills and here's what you have to do and here's how it's going to go, you have to support that, whether you think that they do any good or not. I think you can talk if you you and I both have experience with being in hallways and, for
Sure.
tornadoes or under our desks for, I don't know how that was going to help from a bomb, but whatever. We can talk from our
Shared experience.
experience and say, I did this too. Nothing ever happened. Wasn't exactly the same, but it was something that the school required. I mean, it's like fire drills too. The fire alarm goes off, everybody has to
Sure.
line up, leave the building.
But wouldn't you also say it's the same idea about just being sort of present for that experience? And it doesn't mean you have to have a 20-minute conversation. But if
Right.
the child comes home and says, we had an active shooter drill, that you would say something like, wow, how was that for you?
100%. Be present in the moment with the kid. How
Right.
was that? And really be tuned in to what they're feeling. So if they're nonchalant about it and they say, "Oh, whatever, it was fine," say, "Okay, it sounds like you kind of taking it easy about that, or it sounds like you feel kind of
Okay,
nonchalant, like
right.
it's kind of like that, what happens." Just naming the feeling that you see. If there are buried feelings that are more negative than that feeling, naming the feeling that you see validates the kid enough for them to lose some of their protective armor. And if they are having deeper feelings about it, to be able
For
to tell
those to
you
come
about
up.
it. Hmm.
Well, and I also think that's the point of like a parent that might say, I don't want to bring this up because then we have to talk about it. I mean, you might not necessarily have to talk about it because it might be something as simple as like, I mean, maybe it is out of sight, out of mind, and they're not thinking about it.
Right.
And that's the conversation. And that maybe you'll revisit it because maybe there's something else there, but maybe there's not.
Hmm.
But you miss out on the opportunity of maybe there being more there if you don't at
Right.
least like acknowledge like, hey, this is going on.
Right, exactly. And I think also, Greg, it speaks to kind of a larger picture that just has to do with news in general. And parents being willing to have conversations about, like, what are you hearing in the news? Whether it's, drama with the Kardashians, or whether it's, something as horrible as these mass shootings that are going on, or whether it's something as, which feels as maybe theoretical to kids as climate change, or whether it's the political climate. I think it's really important that we keep that line of communication open about, so what are you picking up on from the news today? That
Well,
we be tuned in and bring them into the conversation, because you can't talk about your values about something, and you can't talk about your opinion or you can't reassure kids about something if you don't bring up the topic.
well, and also explore where they're getting it from because you're saying news, and I don't think, a 10-year-old or even maybe a high school age child is watching CNN, but, I'm thinking about TikTok because there's a lot of consumption of TikTok. There's a lot of consumption of Instagram stories and YouTube. So the
Yeah.
question is like, they might not be getting it from literal the Wall Street Journal, and they're probably not. But I know
Right.
they're saying like there is a lot of stuff on TikTok. And again, I guess your point seems to be that you're at least opening that conversation. Like, what have you heard? Because I'm sure they're
Yes.
getting it from somewhere.
They're getting it from somewhere, no question. At the very least, they're getting it from their peers, right? But all of the forms of the media that they consume have news in quotes component,
Hmm.
a news component to it. Yeah, so it's going to be TikTok, or it's going to be Snapchat, or it's going to be YouTube is, a major source for people. So, yeah, I mean, and if the moment your child has access to any form of quote unquote entertainment,
They're getting it.
they're getting
I mean,
something.
because I don't even I haven't been watching a lot of news on television. I read, but you can't get away from this kind of event. It's too big.
Yeah, I mean, I try to not watch the news if I'm gonna if I'm going to consume news, it's going to be in written form. But I do watch, I watch late night comedy.
Right.
And it's all over the late night comedy.
Sure. You mean like Stephen Colbert?
Stephen Colbert,
Right.
John Oliver. It's because they have to talk about it. So it comes at us through the back door a lot of the time.
Well, and for kids too, and I think that's the point of don't assume that they don't know what's going on. It somehow is getting in there, even if they're picking up, generalized anxiety just from their kids at school, like even if you're not literally reading about it, I don't know how you avoid this.
Yeah.
How does it shift if you're dealing with kids, say in junior high and high school, so they're a little older? Because I'm assuming it's the same ideas in terms of creating space. I mean, teenagers always have the habit to say, "Nah, I'm fine. Don't want to talk about it." What shifts for teenagers?
Well, I think that's probably the primary thing that shifts is they're like, I'm fine. They have a lot of hubris. A lot of them are like, that's not going to happen here, which is, that's self-protective to have that thought process. So the way it differs, I would say, for tweens and teens, knowing that that's their attitude about life in general, and also like, why are you talking to me, Mom? Dad, like, get out of my room, right?
Right.
You have to think about the process of both asking how they're doing, of talking about their feelings, of talking about the news as planting seeds. So less words, drop the seed in the ground,
Right.
walk away.
Don't push.
Right.
Especially if you don't get anything back. I mean, you say that often about everything. It seems similar to even with the younger kids. It's just giving space as opposed to like, now we will have the talk about Texas and I will pontificate and push and how do you feel and poke and you're just going to get nowhere, right? So when you say plant a seed, it's kind of like just stopping in again to say like, hey, this is pretty crazy. Are they talking about it at school? Have your friends been talking about it?
Yeah, and then your teenager's gonna say,
"No,
Dad, get out of here! I'm trying to do my homework." Right?
Any other stupid questions, Dad?
Exactly, and then you leave.
But they might not.
No, well, they probably will.
Right.
But here's the good news: you've said it. You've let them know that that it's in the news.
Well, and you also might even say, I think you've said this before too. Like if you get nothing back, you say, well, listen, I'm, if you do want to talk about it, I'm here.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And then again, the older the child, the more it's about the circle back and circling back around and saying, boy, I saw some new information in the news today. How are they talking about it at your school?
Right.
Make the assumption that they are talking about it. And even if you're getting the talk to the hand sort of attitude, every time you say something, you validate that this is happening, that it's okay to be concerned about it, and that we can talk about it.
And that you're taking it seriously as a parent.
Absolutely.
And is it the same? I'm assuming it's the same attunement that, because when you talk about younger kids and sort of keeping an eye on behavior, I would assume that's the same for high school kids, right? If you see just keeping an eye out, being attuned to this idea, like maybe if there's more generalized anxiety or worry, or if they can't sleep or they're shutting down.
Yes. Yes to all of that.
Okay.
Excellent. You're an excellent student in podcast.
I don't always
partner.
do it in my life. It's when you're sitting here. I mean, that's the other thing too, is we always say like it's not always easy. This stuff is really difficult, and you might not get it right the first time. You've said this too, like if you have anxiety about maybe talking to your kids about this, maybe you write out a script.
Yes.
Right?
Well, as you know, and I think probably our listeners know by now, I'm a big believer in scripts. I think it gives us the opportunity to really craft what we want to say and to get it in a short period of time where they're more likely to listen to the whole thing, and to include validation of what the world's if not what they're feeling about it, what the world is feeling about it right now.
Right.
Or, for whatever topic. So yes, I'm a big believer in scripting. The other thing too, Greg, is that, even if your kids are acting nonchalant and they're all hubris filled and they're talk to the hand, the reality is that they give us a lot of chances to try again.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have just one chance to get it right with any message that we give. We have dozens upon dozens, maybe literally in a day, to get it right, which does speak to the idea of, hey, if you know this is going to come up, sit down and write a script about it. You have plenty of time to write the script. And if they've already told you to go away, there's still time to come back with a more well-crafted
Right, and the chances are it's going to go terribly, potentially, or they're not going to say anything. Just know that you're going to have to go back and maybe do it again.
For tweens and teens especially. Elementary age kids are much more likely to listen, and, they still kind of have this sense that, their parents hung the moon and, it's before all of the hormones get started. So, yeah. So with the older kids, you're going to get more pushback.
I wonder if there's an opportunity too, and we can sort of wrap up that we've done a couple episodes about allowance, and usually there's money you keep, money you save, and money you give. And I'm wondering, does it make sense maybe if you have a child that's really struggling with this? Because part of what's so difficult about this is, I think you said this at the beginning, is just kind of the helplessness you feel, like what can I do?
Yeah.
And maybe we can even include this in the email when we send it out, but there's got to be organizations. Would you say that too? Like if you have a child that's like, I want to do something.
Yeah.
Whether it's donating to an organization that's trying to stop gun violence, like, do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the more concrete that you can make it for kids, especially in terms of how they can help, the better they're going to feel about it. We started out this podcast and I said, I feel just, very helpless about it. We keep talking about it and like, blah, blah, blah. So if you can have actionable items, it's, again, even if it's just contributing, financially to a cause, that's going to help you feel more in control of what's going on.
What are your feelings around a parent sharing their feelings about this, to their child, but not just sharing their feelings? I mean, what if they're overcome? They start to cry, they get very emotional. Is that okay? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I believe it's important for kids to know that their parents have feelings about things, and that it's also okay to model how we handle our emotions as adults for our kids. And it's okay, for example, to cry in front of your children or to be upset in front of your children. I think that there is a tipping point, though, where if you are going to become or have the tendency to become kind of a hysterical about something and just complete meltdown, that, number one, is often scary to children of all ages because they see their grown-ups as being the rock of the family, the solid core of the family. And so if the solid core of the family is falling apart, that can be very scary. The other thing that it does is it doesn't give them room to have their feelings because they feel like they have to take care of you. And so it's okay to show feelings. It's okay to tear up. It's okay to, choke up. It's okay. It's okay to full-blown cry as long as we model the recovery from that as well.
Right, and don't completely lose control.
Exactly. If you are, and I think, it's just a personality sort of thing, or it could trigger something for you, that is, it makes you more undone. Yes. Well said. You need to make sure that you get those feelings out before
with someone else, a therapist or a friend or your partner.
Exactly. Because What your kids need is a fairly calm, honest, but fairly calm presence so that they can have their feelings about
And
it.
that they feel reassured, right? I mean, I think
And
that's
exactly. That if something bad happens in their world, and that could be anything, if something bad happens in their world, their grown-ups, whoever those grown-ups are going to remain solid and capable of handling it. They really need to know that.
So would you say, we always kind of do this at the end of the episode, even if we're reiterating things that we've already said, what would you say are the couple of things to keep in mind? What are the most important things to keep in mind when you're having a discussion with your child about this, whether they're 6 or 18?
I would say the most important things to think about are going to be addressing the information at their developmental level. Is number one. Keeping it simple, regardless of their age.
Not over talking.
Asking them what they've heard about it, or if they've heard anything about it, before you sit down and deliver this
monologue about what's happened.
Exactly.
I kind of love that one. You say that for a lot of things that we talk about. It's like, what do you know? Like, what has been your experience? Whether it's, I always kind of go back to sex or drugs.
Yeah.
But those sorts of things, I love that. And it also kind of gives them agency, so it's not about you pontificating about something as a parent. So that's the idea.
Exactly. And then be open to not only their feelings, but whatever questions they might have. And don't be afraid to circle back several times. It's not like you're bringing up something that they're not already aware of. You're just giving them the opportunity to think between the spaces when you're addressing them and come to you with concerns or questions or their thoughts.
Well, and also you always say, and I already mentioned this once, but answer only the questions that have been asked. And I think the point is that I think all parents do this. I know I do this, is that when you have an anxiety, you have a tendency to fill up the space and maybe overtalk. So I think two things, and I'm just kind of reiterating what you've said, is like, answer only the questions that have been asked. Don't feel like you have to fill it in. And I think also being in tune with them, they getting overwhelmed. Like, they might reach a point where, like, if you're really checking in, like, they might be only take so much, especially with a topic like this, which is so heavy. So would you kind of include that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it goes back to and includes just being attuned to what they're feeling at any given moment. And when you see the shutters go in front of the eyes, the barn doors start to close, you can say, you know what, we'll talk about this another time. I can see that it's a lot to process.
Right.
So that, I think that falls under the category of staying attuned to how they're feeling in the moment. Thanks for listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your family and friends. And if you'd like to hear more about Julie's work, join one of her parenting groups, or see about individual counseling, please visit parentinghorizons.com. Or you can email Julie at julie.ross@parentinghorizons.com.
See you next time.